Right, you're watching Live Now. I'm Austin Westfall. Welcome back in. Let's talk about some international headlines. Russian President Vladimir Putin holding talks with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday at an annual summit, the two agreeing to diversify mutual economic ties. This comes as the U.S. is pressing India to revise its decades-old partnership with Russia. The 23rd annual Russia-India summit is testing New Delhi's efforts to balance relations with Moscow and Washington as the nearly four-year war in Ukraine continues to grind on. Ivana Stradner is here. She's a research fellow with the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Ivana, Putin and Modi announced an economic cooperation program until the year 2030. What kind of signal does something like that show to the West?
So first of all, we have to understand that India has been trying to show this balancing act. And while the West has been trying to isolate Russia, this particular meeting is a signal for both countries that are aligned with Russia and India that Russia is not isolated. But also India has been a very pragmatic partner trying to balance between the United States and Russia. And as the United States imposed tariffs on India, they decided to strengthen its relationship with Russia. And of course, it's also about economics, which is cheap oil. But not only that, there is also defense ties. And the third thing is India has been also supporting Russia in the UN. And they have been working also very, very closely in other areas. Or for example, Russia just started RT, Russian TV for soft power. So it's a very holistic way of how they're cooperating. Meanwhile, the United States has been trying to make sure, that India divorce itself from Russia. And it has been very difficult, of course, for India because it's been a very close ties to Russia historically for a long time. But India also needs American economics. So that's precisely why Modi has been trying to balance. I think it's going to be very interesting to observe within the coming days if a trade agreement between India and the United States, how it's going to unfold. But whoever believes that India is going to say goodbye to Russia is sorely mistaken, because Russia needs India for its reputation, for its oil supply, and for economic ties, and for defense, and for reputation in the global south. On the other hand, also Modi needs Russia for cheap oil, for defense cooperation, but more importantly, to also blackmail the United States. So we are going to really see how it's going to unfold when it comes to this balancing strategy. And my last point, I think it's extremely important to put this in the context of Russian war in Ukraine. India has been trying, to balance. They didn't even call Russia basically an aggressor. They have been quite, silent on all those issues. And the United States and President Trump, correctly, he was, upset why India has been fueling Russian war machinery. But it's very unlikely that India is going to give up on Russian cheap oil and other economic and defense ties.
So India is facing 50% tariffs from the U.S., Ivana. And the reason why they're facing those tariffs is because New Delhi is buying Russian oil. Why aren't external pressures like tariffs making Modi budge on his country's relationship with Russia?
So basically, tariffs do have actually a serious impact already. And that's precisely why the United States and India are considering a new trade agreement. And I have no doubt that India will try to make some short-term concessions, including maybe strengthening more economic ties with the United States, promising relying more on energy sector from the United States. So that's something that we should be watching in the coming days. But, that's a typical balancing strategy that India has been implying like for a very long time. And I'm afraid that it's whoever believes that they are going to completely be aligned with the United States, they're going to be sorely mistaken. That's not going to happen anytime soon.
So we are getting statements in. Putin saying this: to achieve this significant goal, a program for the development of Russian-Indian economic cooperation until 2030 has been agreed upon, as we reported earlier. Modi himself putting this on X, saying President Putin's visit will add vigor to India-Russia ties. So, Ivana, how long can India be friendly with both Russia and the U.S.? What's the likelihood that this balancing act can be maintained in the long run?
So that's, precisely how Modi has been thriving for a very long time. And actually, since 2020, Russia has relied even more on India. So it is going to last until, the United States and our allies allow something like that to happen. But I think it's very important also to zoom out and to also provide a big picture, because Putin will face significantly more damage economically by the end of 2026. There are numerous projections about that. And all those countries that are fueling Russian war economy by buying Russian oil are actually helping that. And that's precisely why the United States slapped all those tariffs. However, I think it's very important to be very consistent in that. While, imposing the tariffs on India for purchasing Russian oil was precisely because of funding Russian war economy, there are still many countries that are allowed, to purchase Russian cheap oil, and there are still, countries in Europe that rely on Russian cheap oil. So I think it's very important to be consistent, and also make no mistake that Russia and China and also India, within the context of BRICS, they're trying to create something what I like to call a multipolar world. And that's precisely, why this balancing act, they believe that it's very sustainable, because even though BRICS is frankly not an important financial place, it serves another role, which is another place to rally allies for the global South. And that's very important for a perception, and that's very important for reputation in the global South. And that's precisely why they also emphasize over the past 2 days about that ironclad friendship between Russia and India. So that's also something that we should bear in mind, how India is playing those games.
So as you've alluded to, a U.S. team is planning to visit India next week for trade talks. What are you going to be listening for then?
Number one, I think it's very important to see, what concessions India is willing to make when it comes to Russia, and I have no doubt there will be, some concessions talking about economic ties, promising more reliance on the energy sector coming from the U.S. But I think it's very important to send a very clear signal to India that relying on Russian oil and fueling their war machinery is not going to be something that the United States will tolerate, especially now during peace talks, because the only way that Putin is going to stop this war if we put him on the defensive, if his economy is suffering, and of course, if the United States is still, willing through our allies to help Ukraine put Russia on the defensive, also when it comes to defense sector. And also, it's one thing that I will be also watching in the coming days and weeks is all those promises in terms of Russia-India defense ties and all those purchases. That's something very important to note, because that's another way that Russia is strengthening its ties with the United States. So I have no doubt that India will also offer something like that to the United States in terms of defense cooperation.
Ivana Stradner is a research fellow for the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Always good to check in. Thanks.
Thank you.